Hey everybody, coming to you today with another Bible review. This time we're going to be looking at a new update of a translation. This is going to be the New American Standard Bible. This is the large print ultra thin reference, but this is the 2020 update. One thing about the New American Standard Bible, it's only went through a couple of updates. It started back in the 70s. And then there was an update in 95, and now this one. So it's not one of those translations that gets updated quite a bit. Now I just want to take a look at the Bible that they sent me, the binding, the cover, and all that. And then we're going to get into the actual update of the translation, which will be a little bit more lengthy. This is the leather touch that they sent me. The feel on it feels very much like leather. The back here you can see it says Holy Bible, New American Standard Bible 2020, large print out within New American Standard Bible, and this one was sent from the Lockman Foundation. Now, the Bible itself is Smith sewn. One of the things that I've seen about this that has changed is this one is paragraph format. It's not a verse by verse, which normally a New American Standard Bible would be verse by verse. Center column references, footnotes at the bottom, subtopical headings, and probably about a 10, maybe a 10.5 point font. The paper is very much like the normal Foundations printed Bibles. It has the blue hue to it. I noticed that they did update their ribbons. These are 1/4 inch double satin ribbons, which is good. I would have liked to have seen that they'd keep the verse by verse format. There is quite a bit of bleed through in this, as you can see here. Not too awful bad, but it is line matched, so that is a plus. It's Smith sewn, black letter, text, and of course in the front you have your deaths, marriages, and your presentation page. In the back there's some topical concordance, as well as the book introductions a little bit further on back here, parables of Jesus, and your maps in the back. Here's your book introductions. So that being said, I don't really want to talk as much about the Bible itself as the translation. So let's talk about the translation. For me, and I've been looking at Bibles for quite some time. I have a bachelor's degree in theology and a master's degree in ministry. Bibles have always fell into pretty much two categories. You have formal equivalence, which is usually pretty literal to the Greek and the Hebrew text. Then you have dynamic equivalence, which is more of like your thought for thought process. Those are going to be your NIVs, your New Living Translation. Your formal equivalence Bibles are going to be your ESV, your New American Standard Bible, CSB kinda, King James Version, New King James Version. Those are all fairly literal formal equivalence Bibles. So this one, the New American Standard Bible, has always been claimed as the most literal formal equivalence translation. So what's different about this new update? Well, if you buy one and you go to the front, you'll see a few things. So let's talk about what you would use a specific translation for. For me, I have a top three. I've always used the New American Standard Bible, the ESV, and the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible. And I've used them for different purposes. The New American Standard Bible and the ESV I've used to preach out of, to teach out of, to study. And mainly the CSB has been used for reading. Like if you were going to sit down and read complete books of the Bible or extended period of time, the flow, it's easier to read as you're reading it. It uses a modern language. It uses the words in the way we talk. Whereas the ESV and the New American Standard Bible are sometimes harder to read. The ESV uses words that are kind of archaic, kind of along the lines of the King James Version. And the New American Standard Version, the 1995 update, was always kind of wooden and hard to read as well. So what makes this one different? Well, to me, and this is my opinion, you're going to have a lot of opinions on this updated text, the 2020 version. To me, this one has now become the all-around best Bible. You still have your literal translation, your formal equivalents. It's easier to read now. So to me, kind of makes it to where you don't really need three different translations. If you have a translation that flows well and reads easy, and it's a very literal translation of the Greek and Hebrew text, and you can preach and teach from it, what else do you need? So let's look at some of the changes that we have here. And a lot of things have stayed the same in this. For instance, the italic words that have been added to make it go to flow better. The way that they put Old Testament references in as small cap blocks. Your parentheses around text that wasn't in the older manuscripts all stayed the same. So what's different? Modern English usage. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's one of those things where it just reads better. And you can go through this for time's sake. I'm going to try to keep this, I don't want this to be a 20 or 30 minute video. Gender accuracy. Now what changes in this is that, sort of like the CSB did, any place where it said brethren, and the Bible was talking to a mixed crowd, in other words, that had men and women and children, and it said brethren, this new update changes it to brothers and sisters. To me, that's not a big deal. If it's talking about just men, it still holds it's talking to, it puts in there men. So I don't feel like it's some gender neutral translation that's going to make anything. It holds to the way it should be written. And of course, like I said, in the word brethren, for the accuracy's sake, if it was, spoken to just men, then it keeps that. Here's a difference. Most places the phrase let us has been replaced with let's. That flows much more accurately with the way that we talk. Not all places it does that. It gives different areas, but it does use contractions. Now, the biggest difference I feel like is the tenses, the Hebrew tenses and the Greek tenses. The names in the New Testament, I believe that stays the same, where it doesn't, the Greek name for an Old Testament character is somewhat different, mostly different, and it keeps the names that you can understand. For instance, the name Jesus itself would normally be like Joshua in the Old Testament, and there's several other things, James to Jacob. It's so that we can understand. That's not nothing. I'm pretty sure the 95 did that as well. But the Greek text and the Greek tenses have changed. This one uses the 28th edition of the Nestle Aland, and that's the biggest difference, is the Greek tenses and the Hebrew tenses. And what you'll see is it's just the way that it flows. It's the past tense, the present tense, and the future tense of the way the English language is spoken. Other than that, I really don't see a big difference in anything. Like I said, the small caps stay the same. The quotation marks, capitalized words, italics, that's all the same. Now, I have went through and I compared this to the text in the English Standard Version, the CSB, and then there's a new literal standard version that is very, very literal to the Greek and Hebrew. And I'll tell you, I just feel like this one flows more. It does more of what, if I was going to translate it, it words it more of the way I would have worded it. One of the things that I looked at, of course, was John chapter 3. And just for instance, we'll pull up John 3:16. Let's look at John 3:16. And here it is. This is the new version. And I have these pulled up on the computer. I've got 4 or 5 different translations over here pulled up to do a parallel on. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. Now, the New American Standard 95 edition says this: For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. So see, there's a difference. The new one puts his only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. See, that's the difference. And I like the way this one reads better than the old one. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, Jesus, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. So, what's the difference? Well, you have the begottens taken out, but also everyone who believes. In the old translation, it said whoever believes in him. So that's just kind of some of the changes that you see. The CSB says, For God so loved the world in this way, he gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. And so there's a bit of a difference there. And I was going to look at maybe one more verse, but for time's sake, I think I'm just going to leave it be. We're already at almost 12 minutes here. I will say this. I'm going to look at it a lot more. But to me, from what I've seen so far, this is going to be probably the all-around best translation for me. For reading, for study, for preaching or teaching, or whatever it may be. To me, this one almost hits all of the points. Like I said, I've used 3 translations for a long time, ESV and New American Standard Bible for sermon preparation, and mainly the CSB to read. And that may not change. I may still use all 3. But this one seems like it could do all 3 of them. The only thing that I will say is I wish it was verse by verse instead of paragraph format. I'm sure they're going to have verse by verse versions. It's just this one that I got is paragraph format. So hopefully this has been informative. Tell me what you think. Like I said, this is all opinion. You may have a completely different opinion on this new translation. You may hate it, whatever. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, and this one is mine. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.